right, so I am kind of like Shauna, where I would like to walk around the room too, but for the sake of training today, so I can stay in view of the camera, I'm going to stay back here. So if you'll join me on page 13, we're going to start Module 2, and although it doesn't show it in our participant manuals, Module 2 is going to be broken up into 2 parts. I will be completing Part 1. So now that we've kind of gone through a timeline of community action agencies and community action at its inception and how we've introduced ROMA, we're now going to start talking about 2 building blocks in a management and accountability system for the network. So if you'll look at the learning objectives on page 13, for part 1, we are going to be addressing just the first 2. So participants are introduced to Peter Drucker's management framework as a support for ROMA principles and practices, and participants will be able to understand the purpose of a mission statement and identify its elements. All right, so in Module 1, you learned that the original purposes of community action were assisting families and individuals to become self-sufficient, mobilizing public and private resources to make the entire community more responsive to the needs and interests of the poor, and bringing about greater institutional sensitivity to poverty. So I'm going to introduce Peter Drucker. He wrote this book here. It's called The 5 Most Important Questions You Will Ever Ask About Your Organization. I can pass this around if any of you would like to look at it. So Peter Drucker was the world's most recognized management consultant. He did die at the end of 2005. His writings cover both the nonprofit and for-profit sectors. Drucker's writings describe the first conscious and systematic application of management principles that occurred in 1901 for the U.S. Army, and then later in 1912 for the Mayo Clinic. So according to Peter Drucker, he says that each social sector institution exists to make a distinctive difference in the lives of individuals and in society. Making this difference is the mission, the organization's purpose, and very reason for being. A mission cannot be impersonal. It has to have a deep meaning and be something that you believe in. I'm going to pass that around, Erin. All right, so question number 1 of Peter Drucker's 5 questions are, what is our mission? The effective mission statement is short and sharply focused. The mission says why you do what you do, not the means by which you do it. The mission is broad, even eternal, yet directs you to do the right things now and into the future so that everyone in the organization can say, what I am doing contributes to the goal. So it must be clear and it must inspire. So, Drucker question 1 is, what is our mission? The agency mission is a concise description of the agency's purpose. It is the foundational statement upon which the agency builds and says why the agency is in business. So mission statements have, 4 concepts that should be included, and the first of those is population. Your mission statement should be able to identify the population that's being served. Does the mission identify low income or another designation? Is there a geographic target for the population? The mission statement should also address the service or the services that are being provided. So can you tell from the mission statement the type of service that are administered by the organization or its referrals? As Drucker says, the hospital isn't going to sell shoes and it's not going into education. It's going to take care of the sick. The third component that your mission statement should address is the outcome or the outcomes that are achieved. Are those clearly stated? Can you tell what change will occur? And then lastly, relationship should be identified in the mission statement. Is there any identification of relationships with other organizations that show connections that help further its mission? All right, we are now on page 15 in your participant manual, Understanding Mission Statements. So the mission statement should address 2 central themes. Why are we in business, and what are the results that we're trying to achieve? So think of the mission as a soundbite. Can the organization's mission be communicated clearly and concisely in a matter of seconds? Can the organization's mission be understood by the general public or your neighbor? The mission statement will describe the purpose of the organization and what it intends to do and accomplish. As we know from Drucker, the general mission or business of a nonprofit organization and local government is to make a difference in human lives. In the case of community action, the guidance from legislation is that we are to support families in their transition out of poverty and to improve the communities in which they live. Therefore, community action mission statements should include some reference to the relationship the local agency has to others in the community who may be engaged in anti-poverty work. So at the bottom of page 15 here, there's a tip from Drucker here. He says that an effective mission statement is short and sharply focused. It should fit on a t-shirt or also on the back of a business card. How many of you have your agency's mission on the back of your business card? Maybe one. Okay. All right, cool, good. All right. I'm just gonna put this on Shauna's flip chart for a minute. All right, so if you will join me on page 16 in your participant manuals, we're going to do an activity. We are going to review some mission statements, and so I will hand out your activity, but first I think we are going to deconstruct this mission statement that I have up here for you. And so it says, to advocate for, support, and train CSBG funded agencies utilizing our collective strength to eradicate poverty. So once again, as you know, our mission statement has 4 components. And so starting with the first one there, the population. Can you tell me what the population is from this mission statement? Yes. Anyone shout it out? CSBG funded agencies. Okay, so we have our population. What about the service or the services that are being provided in this mission statement? Is that made clear?
Yes.
And what is that?
Support and train.
Advocate for, support, and train. What about the outcome? What's going to happen or what change is going to occur based on the services that this agency is providing?
We're going to eradicate poverty.
Eradicate poverty, perfect. And then lastly, the relationship. It might be kind of fuzzy on this one, but what's the relationship that this agency has based on their mission? Yes, collective strength. Once again, it's kind of a stretch, but they've got collective strength within their community to eradicate poverty. I also did color code it, so that might help you as you guys complete your activity here. So I'll pass out the activities, and then you guys can take about 5 minutes. If you want to work with the person next to you, you're more than welcome to do that. Aaron, do you want to? Melissa, did you get one? I did. Okay, great.
Does everybody understand the directions?
I might need them one more.
All right, thank you, Shauna. So you have 10 mission statements on your sheet there, and what I want you to do is identify the 4 components of each mission statement. Like I said, feel free to work with the person next to you or a small group, but you're going to identify the population, the service, the outcome, and the relationship. Once again, everyone's mission statement's different, so maybe some of the components aren't going to be as clear, but we'll go over the answers when you guys are all done, so we will understand what we're looking at.
For some reason, missing parts. Okay. I already know, so I'm going to let you use your time. Help from it to be good. Yeah. So in this piece, we're doing the first one, we're going to second.
There we go. I think it's okay. Hey, Erin, will you just kind of keep track of that light and make sure it continues to blink? Yes. Thank you. All right, has everyone had enough time to get through at least a few of the mission statements? All right, so, you know, as I walked around the room, some of you were like, well, gosh, this one's stumping me, I don't know about this one, and as you are probably aware that not all of these mission statements are complete. They're not all gonna have, you know, the 4 components here. So we'll go over a few. We can start at the bottom here with number 10. Do I have a volunteer to read number 10 for me?
I can read it.
Okay.
To improve the quality of life through advocacy, commitment of resources, and delivery of services.
Perfect. Okay, so taking that mission statement, is there a population identified in number 10?
No.
No, I'm hearing no. That's correct. There's no population. What about the service, that number 10? What's the service that this agency is going to provide?
Advocacy, commitment of resources, and delivery of services.
Perfect, right. Advocacy, commitment to resources, and delivery of services. Is there a relationship that's stated in number 10? No. Awesome. And then lastly, the outcome. Is there an outcome in number 10?
Yes.
And what is that?
Improved quality of life.
Improved quality of life. Yeah, that's a stretch, right? But it's there. Yes, do we have a question over here?
When we were discussing the different mission statements, a lot of them have kind of duality because they can be more than one.
Mm-hmm.
And so, do they have to be identified as only one?
Is only one mission statement?
No, not as one mission statement, but one of the areas.
It should be. In essence, what we are learning, your agency should have the 4 components. I know it doesn't always work out that way, right?
Well, right, I don't disagree with the 4 components, but some of them are dual, but,
We saw the same thing, kind of they blended.
right.
Absolutely, yes. These are real actual mission statements of some community action agencies and I think one CSBG office. And so we do use real mission statements to make it a little bit more maybe relatable, right? It's hard.
And some of them need to start over.
And yes, some of them you should just start over. All right, let's go to number 8. Do I have a volunteer to read mission statement number 8?
Sure. To provide programs leading to self-sufficiency in XY County.
All right. What's the population there?
County.
Okay. Could be, right, what, the people, who are these people in XY County, right? What about the service?
Program.
To provide programs, right? Once again, very vague. What kind of programs are we doing? What's the outcome listed in mission statement number 8? Self-sufficiency. And the relationship? There's none, right? All right, let's go to mission statement number 4. Do I have a volunteer to read that one?
Okay, all right.
Okay,
To eliminate the causes of poverty in partnership with the county human service offices by strengthening low-income individuals, families, and communities through self-sufficiency initiatives in XX County.
thank you. Kind of a mouthful there.
Yeah.
All right, what's the population of mission statement number 4?
Low-income individuals,
Families
families, and communities.
Right, in XX County. All right, the service that's being provided in number 4?
Self-sufficiency initiatives.
Correct, self-sufficiency initiatives. All right, what's the outcome? What's going to change because of those self-sufficiency initiatives?
Eliminating causes of poverty.
Right. And then, you know, they throw in that word strengthening. They're strengthening the individuals, families, and the community, right? Could be a stretch on that. And then lastly, the relationship.
Their partnerships.
Right, in partnership with the county human service offices. All right, so we're actually going to take this activity one step further, and we're going to start talking about the assumptions behind mission statements. And so now that we've reviewed these mission statements using these elements here, the 4 components, we're going to think about another way to examine mission statements. And so although this activity is not listed in your participant manual, it's important for us to consider other ways to think about our agency's mission statements. And so let's maybe take the example that I have up here, to advocate for, support, and train CSBG-funded agencies utilizing our collective strength to eradicate poverty. What does this mission statement tell you about the agency's assumptions about poverty and their role in its reduction?
They're assuming they can eradicate poverty.
Right, yeah, that assumption is there, right? And they're assuming that they're gonna eradicate poverty just by having a, collective strength. Do we have can we make any other assumptions based on this mission statement? What does this agency assume about poverty? Or about the agencies that are working to eradicate poverty?
That we have a strength, that we have the skill set to be able to do that.
Right. And maybe if not, they're gonna train them. They're assuming that maybe just with some training, we can get our CSBG funded agencies to eradicate poverty, right? Any other assumptions?
I think that it kind of assumes that they're not going to work with agencies outside of their organization to help eradicate poverty.
Right, just the CSBG funded ones. And I believe that this mission statement came from a state CSBG office, and so maybe, by way of their funding requirements, they only can provide training and support to those that are receiving CSBG funds. So, yeah, great.
So how does, well, never mind. I was gonna say, how does a state office or a state association help support those community action agencies that have TANF and private and other governmental funding sources? That's something we will talk about later. Sorry, that was.
That's okay. No, just to, off the top of my head, I think capacity, right? What does the agency need support for? Do they need support? Are they needing that from the association?
That's such a great question, though, because that directly affects our agency.
Right, for many, and Kyle and I have had this conversation, for many public agencies, CSBG is a very small part of the funding that comes through, especially those of you that work with TANF. But it's one of the most restrictive
Right.
and time-consuming ones, so.
Yeah, no, that's
Conversations that are happening.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I'm going to pick out, actually, you know what, I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to re-look at your mission statements and formulate some assumptions. What is this agency assuming about poverty, about eradicating poverty? So take about 5 minutes. Once again, feel free to work with the people next to you if you prefer that. And then we'll come back as a group and talk about those.
The assumptions on these
On the mission statements. Yep, the same sheet that you guys were identifying the components on. Oh, yeah, that's right.
Huh?
All right, have you guys had enough time to maybe talk about, review some of the assumptions behind these mission statements here? Do you need a few more minutes?
I
I'm
think,
done.
I think some of the big assumptions that we always make is that we're the solution.
Ooh.
And really, if you read the heart of CSBG, it's the community relationship, and that it takes all of us to actually solve the problem.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think, that speaks volumes to why it's so important to have our relationship identified in our mission statement, right?
I think another assumption is that services alone are what's going to bring someone from poverty into self-sufficiency. When we start talking about the cycle of the theory of change, it's a lot more than just in a stabilization funding. There's a lot of hand-holding, do for, do with, and cheer on type of things. So it's not just services alone.
Absolutely, and I don't want to get too far ahead of our training here, but Susan, you bring up a good point, and Shauna discussed the goals in our timeline in module 1 about family level goals, community level goals, and agency level goals. And yes, as Susan's saying, it's not just the services that we're providing to our families, but we're making sure that our agencies have capacity to be able to provide these services, and our families are receiving these services, and that our communities are situated better to be able to manage poverty. Thank you, Erin. Okay,
Way to go, Aaron.
we're back on. We're back online. Sorry.
You get employee of the hour, Erin. Name goes up on the board.
Okay, so you were saying that there are partnerships available, right? And what is that, and assuming that the work can get done with partnerships, that's assuming that they can't do this work alone, right? As Kyle was saying. Any other assumptions with number 2?
I got it.
I think this one actually talked more about the, responsibility of the people we're serving to achieve their self-determination. Like,
Right.
that's an important part.
Right, we're assuming that low-income people need to achieve self-determination,
Or that they haven't achieved it already.
or that they haven't achieved it already. Perfect.
Is that meaning that we're using our filter to determine what self-sufficiency looks like?
Perhaps, yes. Or how is self-sufficiency and self-determination tied to poverty? Being
What does it
low-income?
look like to them versus what it looks like to us?
This is also saying that we're going to be successful if we assist people in achieving self-determination, right? We're going to self-determination equals success, right? That's another assumption. All right, let's look at mission statement number 6. Do I have a volunteer to read number 6?
I can read that.
Okay.
To work with other agencies, jurisdictions, and the people of Wyoming County to plan and manage social services and to achieve a safe and healthy community.
Thank you, Erin. Any assumptions that we can make based off of that mission statement?
That by planning and managing social services, that you will achieve a safe and healthy community.
Right, just all we need to is just plan and manage, right? If only it were that easy. Any other assumptions?
That other agencies and jurisdictions are going to want to work with you.
Absolutely, and have that same ideal in mind, right? What is it saying? If we have a safe and healthy community, yeah, we've succeeded, right?
We live in utopia.
Yeah, right, okay. All right. Let's look at mission statement number 8, to provide programs leading to self-sufficiency in XY County. Any assumptions we can make off of that short mission statement?
Yeah, there's programs to provide.
Yeah, right. And they know what programs are going to lead to self-sufficiency. They don't even state them. We know, right? It's also maybe assuming that if they provide the programs, it's going to be successful. Does it say anything about partnerships or relationships in that mission statement? I'm seeing head nods over there. No. So, gosh, if we don't see any relationships or partnerships, it's probably safe to assume that they can do the work alone, right? They don't need any help. Yeah. So, you know, this activity, we won't go over all of them, but, you know, please continue, you know, take your activities with you and continue to think about, you know, is your agency's mission statement complete? Does it have the 4 components here? And if it does, great. If not, maybe work on that. And then once that's complete, you know, what assumptions are being, you know, can be made from your agency's mission statement? Are there assumptions? Are these good assumptions, bad assumptions? And so on page 17 in your participant manuals, you can at some point in time take that space to work out your agency's own mission statement.
I felt like number 7 was probably the best one.
The best one. Do you want to go over number 7?
Well, I think it's good to go over one that's not too bad.
Okay, absolutely. Yeah, if you want to read number 7 to the group, that would be great.
Absolutely. To distribute block grant funds through an effective and efficient means, promote the development of economically viable communities and suitable living environment by creating sound and adequate public facilities, utilities, infrastructure, housing, and job opportunities. Now, to me, that's better because then you can go on later and define each of those things and how you're going to do it, as opposed to just being so vague that there's nothing there.
Right, we're providing a service and poverty is going to be eliminated.
Right.
Absolutely.
And then you would just plug in your numbers and you can start.
Right.
I like that one.
Okay, you like that one? Yeah, we've got a grant writer over here, and she really likes number 7.
If only it fit on a t-shirt.
Yeah, you would need a really big business card, or you'd have to hand out a pair of readers for every business card you handed out.
That is the struggle, is making that.
Yeah.
To have
Right.
an elevator speech.
Yeah, absolutely. While we're talking about number 7, does anyone have any assumptions that they'd like to throw out there with that?
Does number 7 have a relationship?
Does number 7 have a relationship? Did anyone get to number 7 when they were doing that?
No, but I don't.
I'll do all the services.
Right, there we go. Okay, yes, no relationship identified there.
They're also just using block grant
Block
funds.
grant,
Mhm.
specific
Right.
to that funding, that's it.
Right, so we might assume that maybe this could be another state office, right? Only in charge of administering the block grant. Maybe that would be why there's no relationships there, although it's hard for me to assume that you can administer CSBG without any relationships either within your state office, with your feds and your funders.
So the block grant needs a population?
So,
Relation item.
yeah, so, okay, look, I got my master sheet here. So this is a state office mission. So, no, there is no explicit population listed. Based on knowing the context of this is a state office mission statement, you could say that the population might be implied. Once again, not everyone that reads your mission statement is going to have all of that context. So no, there is not an explicit population without context. All right, so for the sake of time, we will move on to page 18. We're just about done with part 1 of module 2. We're going to talk about mission change and mission drift. So we're going to bring Peter Drucker back into the conversation. Remember his 5 questions. He has a quote that says, "One cautionary note, never subordinate the mission in order to get money. If there are no opportunities that threaten the integrity of the organization, you must say no." Peter Drucker stresses the importance of organizations reviewing their mission statements as they would their strategic plans and as they consider the addition or the elimination of a program or service. He says anytime an organization adds or drops a program or service, the mission should be reevaluated. So you shouldn't change your agency's mission statement without a cause. Remember, the mission of Community Action Network, as guided by legislation, which we learned in Module 1 with Shauna, has not changed since its inception in 1964. It has been reviewed and found to be a strong statement that is as applicable today as it was back then. So the purpose of this section is to explain the tension between proactively changing a mission statement and passively allowing the agency's mission to become diluted. All right, so we will start on the top of page 19. Do I have a volunteer to read the top 3 bullet points on page 19?
I got you. Mission change occurs when the organization has done a comprehensive study of current circumstances, has identified a need for restatement of the mission or reorientation of the agency to meet new challenges and opportunities, and makes a conscious decision to change the agency focus.
Great. So to illustrate when it would be appropriate to change a mission statement, let's look at 2 examples of organizations that have made very specific and very deliberate changes to their mission statements. So we have the March of Dimes. Your book says that the March of Dimes mission was to eradicate polio. We're going to use them as an example that they changed their mission because they achieved their goal. So if their mission was to eradicate polio and they achieved their goal, it's probably safe to say that they eradicated polio, right? Awesome. And so what happened here? They succeeded. The March of Dimes reinvented themselves. And today its mission is improved pregnancy outcomes and reduction and elimination of birth defects through education and research. That bottom gray shaded box here is the mission for the YWCA. This is an example of a mission change because the organization expanded its interests to include new elements. So the original mission of the YWCA was to provide housing, recreation, and a faith-based community center for young women. Notice that there's no outcome in that mission statement. So what happened? The organization actually changed its focus. The new YWCA mission is eliminating racism, empowering women, and promoting peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all by providing safe places for women and girls, building strong women leaders, and advocating for women's rights and civil rights in Congress. So we've gotten more context. They realized that they were actually providing more services than what their original mission statement was. And as Peter Drucker says, if we're adding or eliminating services, it's probably a good indicator that we need to look at our mission statement as well. All right, you can join me on page 20, and we're going to talk about mission drift. So are all of you familiar with the store Sears? Maybe it's been a while since we've seen a Sears. But Sears is a really good example of what happens when we drift from our mission. So for many years, Sears was known for 2 things. Its craftsman tools and its Kenmore appliances. But then down the line, they merged with 2 other companies, which was Kmart and Land's End. And then that diluted their primary focus of craftsman tools and Kenmore appliances. And so now we can get our craftsman tools at Ace Hardware, we can get our Kenmore appliances from a lot of other stores, and now Sears is likely no longer, I think, in a lot of places. And so that's a good idea, or sorry, a good example of a mission drift, right? They merge with these other companies, and when they merge, they're adding new products, and all of a sudden they're not the only ones that can sell craftsman tools and Kenmore appliances. So mission drift is the phenomenon which occurs when the agency departs from its original purpose and core values to take on a task that is perhaps related, but not directly in support of the mission. In some cases, this is a response to external events, such as available funding for something that the organization never did before. In other cases, internal events can also lead to mission drift, such as major turnover in staff or board members. When in doubt, whether to head off in another direction because a donor suggests it or a foundation grant opens up to a new avenue, analyzing that new direction or activity in relationship to the mission statement will help you stay on course. Peter Drucker tells us that defining the nonprofit mission is difficult, it's painful, and it's risky. But it alone enables you to set goals and objectives and to go to work. Unless the mission statement is explicitly expressed, clearly understood and supported by every member of that agency, the enterprise, thanks for bearing with me all. So I'll show you right down here why I'm over here. The mission statement can go at the bottom of your logic model. And the reason it's at the bottom and not in the column is because as we create our logic model and go through this training throughout the day, we're going to want to make sure that everything we do in our logic model, our services and our outcomes are aligned to our mission. So we will get ready for part 2 of module 2 here, but I want to read you our key point summary and perhaps what you've learned throughout this section. And so this section stresses the importance of connecting the agency's mission to the establishment of outcomes. The successful implementation of ROMA must follow a conceptual framework established by the organization and indicated by a strong mission statement. The results-oriented of ROMA is reflected in the agency's mission statement. Peter Drucker's 5 most important questions are introduced into the ROMA curriculum to reinforce the concept that the principles and practices we know as ROMA are a part of the generally accepted management process. Not-for-profit agencies are mission-driven, not profit-driven. The mission statement should address 2 central themes. Why are we in business and what results are we trying to achieve? The mission statement is short and sharply focused, but contains key elements that help to identify the agency. An agency's mission statement is dynamic and should be reviewed periodically, especially if the agency adds or drops programs. This is our mission change. The agency should understand the difference between mission change and mission drift and identify where on the logic model the mission statement will be found. So now that you know what your agency's mission is, you can start thinking about identifying specific needs. All right.